Alright, finally back at Autocross. It's been about a 4-week break since the last event at Front Range Airport, but this time we're actually at Pikes Peak International Raceway, just south of Colorado Springs. And what I really like about this venue is that the Autocross pad's much larger than what we run at Front Range Airport. So what that translates to is courses that are both longer and a lot higher speed than what we typically run at Front Range Airport. So it's good in preparation for nationals, where courses at the airfield are a lot faster than our typical events and also have challenging transitions from high speed to low speed sections that we don't get to typically practice. So that's kind of the aim for this event, is to just try to practice some of those braking sections and also driving at higher speeds opposed to what we'd typically run. So after a little incident at the test and tune the day before, I'm actually running on offset tires. So I'm going to be curious to see how that works out with Bridgestones in the front and Dunlops on the rear, mounted on a much skinnier wheel. I also finally have a way to look at my gauge cluster while I'm going out on a run. So when I was walking the course in the morning, I thought that slalom was going to be a lot faster than it actually was. And really just my reasoning behind that was counting out my paces while walking through the slalom. But what happened is, with that right-hand turn, since you have to turn more to the right than you would to the left, you have to slow down a little bit to get around that first couple of cones. And I wasn't expecting that. So let's see if I can learn from my mistake here. So my brilliant idea to fix that slalom was to not shift into third going into it, which actually wasn't quite enough. So this time I went out with the intention to basically just tap the brakes going into that slalom to try to get the front settled a little bit, and then that way I could make the first couple of cones and make it out of the slalom without DNFing. So I actually completed a run for once without DNFing. The problem is by this point I was about 1.5 seconds behind with finally a clean run in the books. So I went out trying to think about where could I save time. And with this course, since there's so many hairpins, where I can really save the most time is by trying to reduce the amount of distance in the sweepers, and by braking too late you add a little bit of distance. That was what I tried to challenge with this run. So I don't have a co-driver to compare my runs to like I've done in the past, but even after my second improvement on that last run, I was still 7/10 out of the trophies. So I just kind of want to go back and analyze what I could have done just a little bit differently and try to pick up some time and also set up better to not hit that cone. So my thinking, for whatever reason, with all 4 runs, was to try to shift basically right after that first turn and just get into second and be done with it. But now that I'm kind of going back and looking at the footage, I can see I probably could have benefited from first gear a little bit more. So if I just held on to first gear a little bit more as I was still making that turn, I could have shifted and at least had a little bit more momentum for going up that hill, since I'm at a power disadvantage. The other problem, kind of going back and watching this, is that I was keeping a little bit too tight of an arc to those cones. And so I'm thinking, I was kind of debating back and forth on this all throughout the day, but I was kind of thinking if I just carried a little bit wider arc through there, I would have added some distance, but I also wouldn't have had to stop, or not stop, but brake at the top of the hill to get around that one cone. So I would have been able to carry more momentum for that last little bit of straight before that sweeper. And this is where it really shows up, where you can just kind of see how pinched I am to try to get around that cone at the top of the hill, so I have to slow down to make that corner. So with my entry into the slalom here, I think what was happening is I was kind of paranoid at this point of going way too hot into that slalom and DNFing again. So what was happening is I was on the brakes clear back on that intersection and lifting off the throttle and just giving up a ton of speed going into the slalom. And that was kind of where it counted the most, I think, was in that long straight traveling uphill. So giving up speed there was just slowing me down, adding time to my run. And I think I could have gotten around some of my issues by trying to late apex that first cone and just set up a little bit better for it. So I was using the brakes to remedy what could have been fixed with better setup, I think. So right here you can actually see I wasn't challenging that outside cone as much as I should have been. If I were tighter to that outside cone, what that would have allowed me to do is start turning in a little bit earlier. And by turning in earlier, I would have gained a couple of inches to that outside cone on the end, which is all I really needed because it was right in the rear view mirror. You could see I was just running over it with my rear tire. So if I just had a couple more inches, I would have been able to keep that run clean and basically not get that 2-second penalty. So then an immediate consequence of not setting up properly for that Chicago box, I kind of slid out, which I think is actually what ended up hitting that cone, and I gave up too much speed going into that sweeper. But by giving up all that speed, I was trying to make up for it with throttle. So I was going in too slow into the corner, giving up time, but then I was trying to accelerate out to make up for it. But by being on the gas on that off-camber corner, I was actually pushing out wide, which then subsequently also ruined my setup for the following sweeper. So I had to give up a little bit more to make a tighter radius there. So just a couple of slight mistakes I made on that run that really kind of hurt my time, but kind of a learning opportunity as well, so it'll give me something to improve at the next event. So thanks for watching, and catch you next time.